You are listening to the IT Path Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Morrison. Let's go and help you claim your journey into IT. Greetings and welcome. This is Dana Morrison from the IT Path Podcast, and this is episode 10, being effortless in IT. What I hope you get away from this episode is that we do not have to be working so hard. We don't have to have this struggle. I'm going to give you 10 side effects that we have from working too hard. They're going to break us down. I'm also going to give you some tips on how to pivot. We're also going to talk about having fun along this journey and in our workplace, and how do we do that and still get our work done. But if you heard last week's episode, then you know I've been traveling. I've been dealing with panic attacks. I got a lot of stuff going on in my life right now. And I'll be honest, I've got my best friend from childhood he's battling stage 4 stomach cancer, and it's hard. And I'm here. I'm committed to him. I'm helping him out on his journey, finish his journey. Help him finish his last mile so I can go finish my own race. But it's hard. Work is hard. Life is hard. Things that are just going on. It's tough. So last week we talked about panic attacks. And this week, let's talk about being effortless in IT. And this is from some of the material I have here, kind of comes from this book, Effortless by McKeown. I apologize if I'm botching your name, Greg, but it's the book Effortless. And I happened to pick it up in a Books and More that was near the hospital where my friend was at the time. He's home now, but I picked that up to find some reading material. It looked like a great book, and it is proving to be awesome. It's really kind of blown my expectations. A lot of people don't talk about the work struggle. How do we get satisfaction in the workplace? And Greg is just grabbing that bull by the horns, and he lived it out himself. He tells the story at the beginning of the book, and I won't get into that. You should pick up a copy of this book, Effortless by Greg McKeown, and dive into it. So I mentioned last week about rewiring your anxious brain, and that's driven by this anxiety that I've been dealing with, panic attacks that I've seen in my own life. And look, this IT Path podcast, this is about getting you on your IT path, keeping you on it, and having fulfillment in your journey. I've worked in IT for 25 years. I love what I do, don't get me wrong. But there are things that I've had in my own life that have triggered certain sorts of, let's just call it what it is, panic attacks over the course of many years. And I didn't realize what was going on. And now it's like the cover's off and I realize what's happening. And it's time to readjust in my life right now. I had a readjustment years back when I read the book, The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim and Spafford. That's all I could think of his last name, and Behr, B-E-H-R, I believe. But that's a fantastic book, and I talk about that in previous episode. So you can go back a few episodes and listen to that if you're interested in that. But this Rewire Your Anxious Brain has been super helpful because I've been dealing with what is going on in my life that is causing anxiety. How do I deal with it? How do I start to rethink? And the short story is you have to speak the language of the amygdala. And I'm not going to dive into that too deep. I'll let you go back and listen to that episode last week. But this week, we're going to dive into how do we make, dealing with this anxiety and everything that's going on. I've been thinking a lot about the struggle of work and how hard it can be sometimes to get things done. It's just it's super challenging. And we have a small team. My team is awesome. And man, my team has been covering my butt for the last 2 weeks over 2 weeks as I've been up here in Maine, helping my buddy, and they have knocked it out of the park. So Chris and John, if you happen to listen to this podcast, man, I thank you guys. You guys are the best. And John, I know we just brought you on board, but I can't wait to get back so that we can just dive into some of the flows and everything we've got going on. But anyway, I derailed there for a second to thank those guys. As we think about work, we have to think about where work originates. And the oldest account that we really have is, well, from my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but I think it goes back to Genesis. And I think it goes back to God telling Adam in the garden, tend it and keep it. And you can find this reference in Genesis too. And I'm not going to go on this big spiritual rant here. I'm just saying, I happen to believe the Bible is true. But whether or not you do, this is a great reference for origin of work. Tend it and keep it. Talking about the garden. Tend it and keep it. So in our minds, a lot of times we think about the garden and we think about, oh, this is, it was fun in the sun. It was laying around and, making babies and all of that. And there wasn't any labor. Well, that's actually not what we have recorded in Scripture. It is actually tend it and keep it was the message. So whether or not you believe that is true, that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's not gonna play a big role into the rest of our discussion, but it is important to kind of get that perspective. Like there's one of two things, one of two ways that you can have a perspective on this. And one is that work was intended by a sadistic God to be torture, right? Let's put man at the top of the food chain, and then let's just drive him to his bones with work because God is a sadist. That would be one perspective you could take. But another perspective you could take was work was intended to be enjoyable. I tend to think about it in this respect. Work was intended to be enjoyable. It is supposed to be enjoyable. Now, when you have a project that you complete and you do well and you walk away from that project and you think about it, you're like, oh man, that was great. What a great experience. I loved it. And I have something that I can walk away of and be proud of. So if Greg McKeown is correct, this work would also seemingly be effortless. And that is what we're going to focus on. Okay, this isn't Bible study time, guys. This is let's work in IT and let's figure this stuff out. But I thought it was important to go back to a reference that we have that is quite old, that the tend it and keep it reference. So if Greg is right, then work should also be effortless. Well, I say, seemingly effortless. We could drop the seemingly here. It's funny how we add adjectives to phrases when we want to cushion them or to make them harder. Actually, I noticed it when I was writing out my notes today. I made another reference here. I was like, So I said seemingly effortless, but his book says effortless. So let's just take it by the title and say, is work supposed to be effortless? Can it be effortless? And what does effortless mean? Well, get the book. He kind of goes into that. He's not saying completely without any, but he's saying get in the zone, be able to get your work done, and be able to not have complicated issues and problems and all of that. So that's kind of where he goes in the book on this. Now, have you known someone that seems to work through the tough challenges with ease? Can you think of a name? Is there someone in your life that just seems to be able to do tough things, and it doesn't seem to be as tough for them as it is for you? You got a name, you got a picture of somebody in your head. So I'm going to tell you a couple stories here. One, a story of me being a teenager, and I was working at a camp, and there was a bunch of us that they had just put in this driveway down and a bunch of places where people could park their campers, and I was on staff, and it must have been 3 days. All we did for 3 days was pick rocks because the gravel wasn't screened that well. So there was a lot of rocks that had to come out of that driveway. And so we just kept picking rocks. And you think, oh my goodness, just picking rocks. Yeah, it was hard and it was hot and we were drinking a lot of fluids. But there were some certain things about that I remember that was just so funny. For example, we had a guy who came up to, and this isn't a crack about West Virginia, all right? I got nothing against people from West Virginia. There's no jokes there. It's just this person just happened to be from West Virginia. That's all I'm saying. But we're next to this bog where this driveway was, and these campers were parked was a little bit from this bog. and you could hear these bullfrogs going in there. And so this guy, he first time he'd been to Maine, and first time he'd been to this camp, and he's just started work. I think we're probably on day 3 actually of being at camp. So I mean, we're all new to this environment. And this bullfrog croaks, and he says, "Is that a cow?" You know, he was like, what was that noise coming from? Apparently, he'd never really heard a bullfrog. And of course, we all cracked up and laughed. But I've got story after story I could tell you of just the interactions, even in that time, of picking rocks that somehow took the edge off the situation. And if we focus on, oh my goodness, I'm picking rocks, I'm in the hot sun, I hate this, then that drives us down, it wears us down mentally. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting story. Does this person that you kind of put in your head that seems to be able to work with ease, does that person have a servant's attitude? This friend that I have that is battling stage 4 stomach cancer, he's end of life. I'll be honest. There's nothing the doctors can do. His liver's failing, his kidneys are failing. He's starting to get to the point now where he's sleeping more and more. And I'll be honest, it was hard for me to tear away to record this, but I'm not shying away from the hard things of life here. We have to embrace it. We have to get through it. We all have to deal with this stuff. So why not get it out on the table and put it out there so maybe it can be an encouragement to somebody else. So if you got somebody that's, I feel your pain. I'm with you in the journey. I'm in the struggle with you. But this person, his name's Beetle. His last name's Bailey. So he got this nickname Beetle. It stuck with him. And he is helping a widow. He always says yes. He's got this servant's attitude about work. He can make it fun. He can make it enjoyable. And as I was thinking about this book, I was thinking a lot about him. And that was another reason that drove me to record this today. As hard as the situation is, this is important. He's got this servant's attitude. He's got this joy of life. It's in abundance, I would say. His humor, he seems unfazed. Now, let me tell you, you say, oh, that's a person that, man, he's got it all together, right? That's a person that must have had life handed to him on a platter. Let me tell you what, he lost his father when Beetle lost his dad when Beetle was 29 years old. He lost his brother a few years later to brain cancer. 2 years ago, they had to put his mother in the ground from Parkinson's. This guy has seen struggle, yet he has stayed determined in his life. He's allowed humor and his faith and things to drive him in his life instead of being beat down by work, beaten down by life, the bad things that happen. Oh my goodness, this has reminded me of something I read in the book. I hadn't actually put this in my notes. Let me find it. If you get the book, I'm on page 55. So listen to this statement. This is from the book Effortless. It says, when we fall victim to misfortune, it's hard not to obsess, lament, or complain about all that we have lost. In fact, complaining is one of the easiest things to do. It's so easy, many of us do it incessantly. When someone is late to meet us, when our neighbors are too loud, when there's no parking spots one day and we're running late, when we watch the news and so on. We live this, I'm just going to read the beginning of this next paragraph. We live in a complaint culture. Isn't that the truth? Man, Greg, you nailed that. Yeah, it's complaints, complaint. And that wears us down. So how can you find joy through such pain and sorrow? How can you find it? Where is it? Greg would tell you, Greg McKeown, the author, would say, in gratitude. When we flip things around, and we're going to get to that, I've got four things that help us pivot that I pulled from this book. But when we have an attitude of gratitude, man, isn't that different? An attitude of gratitude changes everything. When we think about, I'm thankful for this, I'm thankful for that, it flips our mind around from these negative patterns of thought and this cycle. It seems like a spiral as we go down that we can't control. When we bring that positive, it's like we're spiraling up and we become very positive. It seems like there's nothing we can't do. When we get in those positive moments and we really get momentum in that, wow, we're unstoppable because we're thinking clearly. We can uncomplicate problems. We can move forward when compressed. So anyway, I was just thinking about that, and it reminded me of that part of the book, that chapter. So what makes work hard? Think about this for a second. What makes work hard? Now, I am going to go back to that Bible reference one more time here. No apologies for that. I am a man of faith, but in Genesis, when he told Adam, tend it and keep it, do you think he was saying, hey, you know what, Adam, man, this can be hard work. You got no idea what I got up my sleeve. So what makes it hard? Because if you believe that, then yeah, work's going to be torture. Work's going to be hard. Do you think he wasn't laying around all day? I don't believe that. He was probably picking weeds. He was probably, using his creative skills to make things a little bit better, to plant trees, do whatever. He was likely engaged in that work, and there was satisfaction in the work. I think that we have a hard time with, that is having satisfaction in what we do and getting our mind to a place where we can enjoy it. Because when we finish a project and we're exhausted, we really can't enjoy it like I think we're supposed to, right? So let's go on to we make work hard. This is a statement I put down here. I think we make work hard. It's our fault. It's nobody else's fault. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, wait, you don't know my boss, or wait, you don't know my coworkers. You don't know the situation I have to go through at work. Yeah, I'm sure I don't. So let's just go down that road for a second. You could take that approach, and you would come up with something like, somehow if you think that the problem is everybody else, somehow you are God's perfect gift for all humanity. Well, congratulations. You probably don't need to listen to this podcast. I should probably be finding yours. So leave a comment somewhere so I can know what to tune into. You're probably God's perfect gift. If that is true, then you must be God's perfect gift, right? Because what I bet is that other people also find you to be the problem. Other people find me to be the problem. I'm sure of it, because the way I think, sometimes I get abrasive about my solutions and answers. Chris, if you're listening, just kind of scratch this part. If I get abrasive with you, Chris, I'm sorry, man. So if we're struggling with that, then we have to let's put the right spin on it. We're all part of the problem then, right? So I'm going to go back to the we statement. We make work hard. Other people make work hard for you. You think in that it's the personality, it's the way they think, the way they act. Then they're stupid. Really, right? Just that's ridiculous. So when I say hard work, what do you think I'm talking about? Let's say hard work is actually showing up to work. All right, dear millennial, yes, you need to show up for work. Sincerely, Dana Morrison, IT Path. Yeah, you got to show up. And I jest, millennials out there. I'm sorry, I jest. But there is a tendency for a lot of people to get hired into jobs and not show. I'm just stating a fact. So we do see it. There is a trend. Hard work. And by the way, we're going to get back to that. Millennials out there, don't tune out just because they said that. I hope you're still here. Hard work. Maybe it's super complicated problems. There, I did it. I put the adjective in, super complicated problems. Not just complicated problems. No, it's super complicated problems, because that's what we do when we really want to emphasize that something is more difficult than it should be, right? We throw another word in there to say, oh, it wasn't just a tiring day. It was a totally exhausting day, right? And we throw those adjectives in there because we're like, we want to make sure that people understand that, this is not tolerable. I can't handle this. We kind of like, it's like we want to emphasize that for some reason. I don't understand why. It's hard work working with difficult people. It's hard work not being praised when a big project finishes up. It's hard work just physically tiring. Now listen, even you millennials out there, yes, all of the above. All of the above. All of this can be hard work. The fact that you struggle with wanting to get up and go to work, that can make work hard. The fact that you're working on complicated problems, that can make work hard. Difficult people, absolutely. Feeling like you're not being attributed value or from a project, a little bit of praise here and there. Yep, absolutely. Physically tiring, yes. Absolutely. Everything above, right? All contribute to this idea of hard work. So how can we take hard work and turn it on its head? How can we flip this around? Now, I'm going to give you 4 things. You know what? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go through these four things that can help you pivot mentally. And then I'm going to give you some 10 side effects, and we're going to dive into some tips. Be right back. Hey, this is Dana Morrison, host of the IT Path podcast, and I hope you are enjoying this week's episode. Are you interested in getting into IT? Let me ask you one simple question. What is holding you back? IT Path is dedicated to developing a community, content, and courses that will help you get unlocked and stay unlocked on your IT journey. I have more than 25 years experience in IT, and I want to share with you what I've learned and give you the tools to succeed on your very own IT path. Even if you are just starting out on your IT journey, we're here for you. To find out more, simply go to itpath.net and sign up for the mailing list, and we will start by sharing some tips, tricks, and tools to help you get going and keep you going. Go to itpath.net and claim your journey. Start your IT path today. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the episode. Okay, so 4 tips that will help you pivot mentally if you're understanding now that work is more hard than it should be. One is you have to focus on what you have. These are things that Greg mentions in his book. If you focus what you have instead of focusing on what you don't have, it's like we magnify what we don't have. We become obsessed with things that we don't have. So it's like they start to rule our lives and they start to dictate. And if we have that attitude, then work is going to be harder. If we focus on what we do have, then naturally, what we don't have is going to be minimized. And I mean, there's things that I bought that I gotta have that, and I get it. It's not quite what I thought it was. Ends up on the shelf, and I need to get the better version. I need to get the better version of the mic with this and that. And I'm on this $30 microphone right now. But I must sound remarkable because that's what it says. Ceremonic, sound remarkable. $30 mic at Best Buy. So the things that we don't have, we focus on those things that we don't have, then we're going to make our lives miserable. We're just going to be exhausted in this rat race of trying to get what we don't have. Well, we're always not going to have things that we want. That's always going to be the case. So if you focus on what you have, then you can start to flip your mind around and get some relief from this tiring, endless barrage, this cycle that keeps driving us down into this pit of despair, the pit of despair, Princess Bride. So that is one thing that we need to kind of deal with, focusing on what we have. Second, having gratitude. I mentioned this earlier. If we have gratitude, if we're thanking our people, if we're noticing, we're thanking our bosses, we're thanking our team, if we have that at home as well, if we're thanking the people, our families, whoever it is, if we're thanking those people, then we we flipping our mind around into this positive cycle, right? Instead of the negative cycle. What I don't have is negative. What I do have is positive. So having gratitude rather than complaints, we have gratitude, and it flips us and focuses on the positivity there. If we relieve our grudges, if we let those go, those are negative. Those will keep driving us down. You keep that little thing, that little thorn that keeps bugging you that you just can't let it go. Accept what you cannot control. I think out of the list, wow, that is a really hard one for me. I don't know about you, but that one's hard for me. Is there one of these on the list that's really difficult for you? Focus on what you have gratitude, relieve grudges, accept what you cannot control. When you're in the struggle and there are things that you can't control, for me, that is going to drive me back into those anxiety moments, that anxiousness. And maybe it does for you, and maybe you notice that, or maybe you'll start to notice that now that hopefully kind of bringing this to the surface and talking about it here. Let me give you a couple stories of complexity. We're going to pivot from this pivoting mentally. Focus on what you have gratitude, relieve grudges. Man, just forgive people. Just let it go. And sometimes you have to go, you know what, that is a hard one, because sometimes you just got to go to them and you got to say, you know what, this situation really made me upset, but I'm done. I'm done with it. It's gone. Right? Let the thought go. And accept what you control. Focus on what you have gratitude, relieve grudges, accept what you cannot control. Okay, two stories. I was at East Grand. I mentioned this in, I think it's episode 2, maybe episode 3. I mentioned about wiring jacks, and I had gone to the school. I'm new at the school. I'm working. Actually, it's funny because I'm in the town where that school is right now. That's where my buddy is. I'm trying to figure out these network problems. Can't figure it out. What's going on? The computer works for a moment, then it doesn't. This was back before Wi-Fi, by the way. So it was working, then it wouldn't work, and the light would come on, then it would go off. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I figure out that every jack has been pretty much pushed in with a screwdriver instead of a regular punch down network jack punch down tool. And it was just like the pattern of the day. It wasn't even a standard pattern, and they only used 4 of the 8 wires, and a lot of those wires were just loose in those jacks. Like you could easily, because I mean, they're trying to do this with a straight slot screwdriver, right? And that situation reminded me of this, about being effortless. Because what did that cause for me? Man, that was a lot of heartache and pain. Now, I do not regret the learning moment. But what I did was I flipped that around. I learned how to wire, and I had the opportunity to put every one of those jacks back in order. I don't know how many it was. And the school is pretty small. We're probably only talking, mic drop. We're probably only talking about 100 base plates, maybe 150. It did take a long time to do it, though. But let me tell you what, I know those patterns like the back of my hand now. And I can put a jack together in no time because I had that practice and I solidified how to do it correctly. Think about the process. You say, well, yeah, they just did it because it was easy and quick for them. No, think about this. The pattern of the day. So they were probably chicken scratching some pattern down that they were going to use on a card or something. So, and that changed often. There were a lot of different patterns in the school, and they're probably just like, having to figure out, oh, I'm going to do brown, white, brown, green, blue on this one, and they would, put it together and brown, white, brown, green. Oh, what was the pattern I was using? Shoot, I don't remember. So I'm going to use green, blue, brown, yellow, or not yellow. There is no yellow, orange. And so they would just change it up. Plus, they're trying to do this with a straight slot screwdriver instead of having the correct tools to do this with. So their time to actually do all of this work was probably expanded, and the work became more complicated. Now, yes, they created grief for me, but I was able to go in there and fix all of that mess, clean up every one of those jacks. And yeah, it was probably more than 150, because when I think about it, I had to wire both ends of them. It wasn't just the faceplate. I had to actually go back to the switch. Actually, it was hubs, cringe moment, and fix both ends of that. And that was a lot of work. So it was probably more like, 200 to 300 of those that I had to do. So let me tell you another story. In Holton, I was at a little school, and I was trying to figure out, they had brought me in because the person that was managing their IT wasn't available anymore, and they needed somebody to just kind of come in and start. There was a tangled mess in there, and they were trying to get this whole thing unraveled. So I go in, I said, well, where's your server closet? So they took me to the server closet. And listen, I tell you, I'm not joking. There was literally, the motherboard was out in the open with wires connected to it, with a hard drive connected off to the side. And it was like screwed into a piece of wood. These little brackets were screwed into this piece of wood. And it was just all over the place. I have no idea why somebody would not put that in a case. It makes absolutely no logical sense, but it gets worse, because not only did they have 3 of these servers, they had 3 of these things with motherboards right out in the open, just on these they had 3 of these things out in the open with hard drives all over the place. And then on top of that, he was running Linux on these, which I'm very familiar with Linux, but however, he was running some really janky setup where this server was acting as DNS and was acting as a file share server, and this other one was acting as a mail server and something else, and this one mounted storage on the other one and vice versa. It was really screwed up. And I ended up finally telling the headmaster, look, I can't unravel this. If you want to fix this and fix this right, we really need to bring in a new server and do it this way. However, and the cloud was, really starting to kick up at the time. I'm just like, just go get some Google email accounts. It's free. Just do that. Why go through all this pain to manage this? But they were concerned about the files on it and stuff, and I get that. And I was like, well, I can maybe retrieve your files and we can dump them somewhere else, but I just can't work with this. This is not logical. Anything that's been set up here is not logical. It's just been completely over-engineered. So I don't know what they ended up doing. I didn't end up going back because it was going to cost money, and the school didn't have a lot of money. But that's an example of this complexity. Over time, some complexity gets built, and it maybe started with, you know what, I'm just going to do this one little extra thing on this server. Oh, I'm just going to do this one little extra thing, another extra thing, another extra thing. And before long, you've got this rat's nest of servers talking to each other and trying to share files back and forth across them. And maybe your file storage is on the same thing as your DNS server, which might even be publicly accessible, and how it's all shared and everything. I mean, it was just a train wreck. So we got to be able to take these complexities and simplify them. I would say that is not how we're intended to work. To drive to complexity is not logical. Let's just figure out how we can make things complex. We can figure out how to make anything complicated, right? We could try to put a 2x4 in a house with a crane, an 8-foot 2x4 that you can handle with your hands. And you could say, well, go get me a crane. Let's get a crane here and lift that 2x4 in place. That'd be asinine to spend all of that extra money. Yet I joke and jest about that, but also I see it when I see big fat stacks that are complicated, that are expensive, that have an incredible array of servers to support all of these different functions, I see exactly that. Somebody using a crane to put up a 2x4. Because in today's world, where we have access to, a lot of services get very secure. You can find services, and we use, Logic apps and Power Automate and different things to lean our stack down and pay very minimally for our stack. So we need to uncomplicate this. When we work from high effort, those two examples I gave you, being in a school, wiring all those jacks, rat's nest of servers, think about this. When we work from that vantage point, here are 10 things that happen to us. And I'm sure there are more. These are 10 that I just thought of, just snap off the top of my head. One, we're tired. We're edgy. We can't think straight. We can create additional risk for the businesses we intend to serve. We might, this is a hard one, so we might end up pushing people away, even our friends and family, because we got this barrage going on. You keep coming home, bringing this barrage home. It's the storm in your mind, right? It doesn't stay at the workplace. It actually travels with you. That goes actually back to the first point. Like, where does this come from? This is coming from us. So we might push people away, even our family. Our mental health is affected. Well, of course, if our mental health is affected, what do you think our physical health? So our physical health is also affected. That's number 7. Our performance ends up lagging. Man, I told you last time, there was times I would sit in my office and I would be kind of like paralyzed, trying to think through the problem. Our performance lags. We feel unfulfilled in work and relationships. This is the glory train here, isn't it? Boy, I wish I could just live this every day. And then number 10, I wrote down, we burn out. And all of this, that's the accumulation of everything that happens is driving this anxiety and all of this effort. We're trying to work so hard. We're trying to get things done. It's like we're pushing this big rock up a hill, and the hill is never ending. And it just keeps getting harder and harder. So here are some tips. Let's make work fun again. All right. This is not a make America great again. This is not political podcast here. However, let's change, make America great again. Let's make work fun again. Do you agree that work should be fun? Think about that. Do you struggle with that? I think I really have. There's been spats in my life, I would say, where I go through work is fun, and then no, it's not so much fun because I'm stressed. Oh, now it's fun. Today's a fun day. Oh, today's fun. Oh, next day, not so much. Something happens, a trigger happens, and all of a sudden I'm back in the pit. So I was thinking about how do we make things fun and work. So here's an example. I don't know if you're familiar with sprint planning, but that's when you get together and you try and you take these little cards and you write on them, the Fibonacci sequence. You try and figure out how difficult something work is. So it goes 1, 1, 3, 5, 8. It's every number plus the number that precedes it. Of course, you have to start with 1, so 1 plus 1 is 1. And that number just keeps getting larger and larger. And I was thinking, well, what if you're doing sprint planning and you're looking at tasks and you're trying to figure out, well, how hard is this? What if you actually got some Nerf bullets with some, the suction cup ones, got yourself a whiteboard and puts a Fibonacci sequence on the whiteboard, nice big, and have people shoot their numbers. That'd be a lot more fun than just, writing it on this card. Well, I thought it was a 13, and I mean, it gives you some builds camaraderie in your team, and gives you an opportunity to just have some fun. And also, I bet people would look a lot more forward to sprint planning if that was the case than they might otherwise. So that's just one little example. And I kind of got that idea from visiting Beetle in the hospital, because I was thinking about ways to make that. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, so another thing, how do I make tickets fun? Work tickets. I was just thinking, couldn't we just clean up or be creative with the verbiage? Like some of our tickets get created automatically. Why not have fun with what the tickets say? Put your own spin on it, and put it in the title, the description, whatever, just so it helps people realize when they get the ticket and they start to work on it, you know what? Somebody's thinking about you and somebody actually wants you to enjoy your work. Isn't that a great thing to just praise people when, as the person, whoever it is that has to do that ticket, have a fun spin on it? How do you make work reviews fun? Have you thought about that? Is there some sort of game you can play to kind of like in a work review to kind of like take the edge off? Because sometimes you have to have tough conversations, and I do not want to minimize that you have to have tough conversations in a review. No question. However, if you can make it more lighthearted, because a lot of times when you're going into a review, you are tensed up. You're nervous. You're like, what is going to happen? How am I doing? How am I performing? And trying to get a read on the person who's reviewing you and HR and all of that. Well, what if you could have more fun with that and just make a game out of it? So it takes creativity. I don't have an answer for you on those things, but my buddy Beetle, how do you make end of life fun? And I mean, I'm not trying to be like overly lighthearted about it, because it's a struggle. But if you can take the edge off of death, if you could figure out how to do that, you can take the edge off of anything. And as I'm here and have this opportunity to be with my friend, I'll be honest, I really look at this as a blessing. I'm the one who gets to be there with him. I'm the one who gets to walk this last mile with him, my best friend from youth. And then I get to go back and finish my own race, finish my own marathon. So in the hospital, the Nerf bullet thing with the sprint planning, that kind of came from us messing around in the hospital. We brought him a couple of little dinosaurs. One was a stuffed dinosaur, and we'd lay it on the shelf, and Beetle would shoot at it and I would shoot at it, and we'd try and knock it over, and just trying to take the edge off of all of this. We also made a gratitude card. Beetle, I'm grateful for, and we put that in his room, and people were posting on Facebook, and we'd write them down there and read them off to him. That takes the edge off. Telling old stories of childhood, that can take the edge off. Letting people know us for who we are instead of like trying to put some mask on when we're going into work. That will, if we're around people that truly care about us, and I think a lot of people really do care. They might be gruff on the outside, but I think a lot of people really do care. Even the hardest, there's these little moments in even the hardest people's lives where you see this like, there's a little chink in the armor there, isn't there? There's a little smirk, a little smile there. So wrapping it up, I don't believe work is a torture of a sadistic God. It is a blessing, and we should enjoy it. Get going, stay going on your IT path. Go to itpath.net for information about what all we're doing. And until next time, this is Dana Morrison, and I'll see you later. You have been listening to the IT Path podcast. Did you like this episode? Why not subscribe and share with others? IT Path is dedicated to helping you claim your IT journey. You can find out more at itpath.net.